Narratives in the NFL are powerful. They build legends, break careers, and shape public opinion before a player even touches the field. One storyline catches fire, and suddenly it becomes gospel, until the truth slips through the cracks. That's exactly what happened when Rex Ryan took aim at Shedeur Sanders with a narrative that was loud, wrong, and reckless. Rex didn't just question Sanders' performance, he questioned his character. He labeled him lazy, said he didn't put in the work, called him an embarrassment. It was the kind of takedown built for headlines, wrapped in the tone of authority that only a former NFL head coach could deliver. But it wasn't just exaggerated, it was flat-out false. And when behind-the-scenes footage surfaced showing Shedeur fully engaged in meetings, front row with coaches, studying film with veterans.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Ryan's narrative collapsed under its own weight. Shedeur Sanders didn't need to defend himself. The footage spoke louder than any interview. It showed a young quarterback not just showing up, but stepping up, paying attention, asking questions, and putting in the time behind the curtain. It directly contradicted everything Rex Ryan said. And now, insiders say the NFL isn't taking this lightly. Not because Rex hit a nerve with his opinion, but because he fabricated a damaging story about a rising face of the league, on air, with confidence, and without evidence. This wasn't just a bad take. It was a hit job disguised as analysis. And it revealed something deeper about how the NFL ecosystem handles young, confident, outspoken talent, especially when that talent refuses to play by outdated rules. Shedeur isn't trying to fit the humble rookie mold. He's not pretending to be quiet so old heads feel comfortable. He's walking in with a name, a brand, and the ability to back it all up. And that makes people uncomfortable. Especially people like Rex Ryan, who come from an era where players were expected to earn their voice by staying silent. Shedeur doesn't subscribe to that. He doesn't hide his confidence. He wears it like armor. Not as an ego trip, but as strategy. And in today's NFL, that strategy works. Visibility is currency. Branding is survival. Players who wait quietly for recognition often never get it. Shedeur is making sure his name is in the conversation, whether the old guard likes it or not. What Rex did wasn't just a personal attack, it was a cultural reaction. A reflexive response to a player who represents a new wave the NFL still doesn't fully know how to handle. The league wants stars, but only the kind it can control. Shedeur Sanders challenges that control, and Rex Ryan's meltdown was the symptom of a larger problem, the fear of change disguised as criticism. But the truth got out. And when it did, it didn't just clear Shedeur, it exposed the cracks in a system that still hasn't caught up with the players it claims to support. Rex Ryan didn't just miss the mark, he fired a false shot at a player who never gave him the ammo. Shedeur Sanders, the son of a Hall of Famer, the face of a new generation of quarterbacks, got accused on live TV of being lazy, unmotivated, and an embarrassment to the game. Not because of what he did on the field. Not because of what he failed to do in practice. But because of a narrative, a lazy one, rooted in projection and shaped by discomfort with how much the league is changing. And right on cue, the evidence rolled out. Footage from behind the scenes, team meetings, practice sessions, full transparency, showed Shedeur not only present but engaged. Sitting in the front row with veterans and coaches. Taking in game plans. Studying. Focused. Not a single frame matched what Rex claimed. The so-called embarrassment looked a lot more like a future leader. And just like that, the entire storyline collapsed. That's the part that never gets enough attention. When a false accusation falls apart, the damage doesn't just vanish. People heard it. Headlines ran with it. Clips went viral. And even after it's disproven, the label lingers in ways that can stain a player's reputation, their marketability, even their draft perception. So when Rex Ryan threw out those claims, he wasn't just being reckless, he was feeding into a deeper problem within NFL culture. Because this wasn't just an isolated hot take. It tapped directly into the league's long-standing discomfort with confident, outspoken players, especially black quarterbacks who show up with self-belief and branding before the system decides they've earned it. The idea that Shedeur might already know who he is and what he wants to represent before stepping onto an NFL field? That's what triggered the backlash. The NFL has always rewarded obedience first, charisma second. The message to players is clear: be marketable, but not too loud. Be confident, but only if it's polished and palatable. Be a brand, but don't look like you built it yourself. Shedeur didn't play by those rules. He showed up ready, confident, camera-aware, media-trained, already building a presence that rivals some NFL veterans. And he did all that while also doing the work. The footage didn't show someone coasting on a famous last name. It showed someone earning respect from the people who actually matter: teammates, coaches, vets. Rex Ryan saw all that and still tried to rewrite the script. And the league noticed. According to reports, the NFL was not pleased. Sources suggested Rex was quietly warned behind the scenes, told to tone it down, to stop making baseless claims, to think before turning a player into a scapegoat. Because the league has enough PR problems without a former coach using national airtime to attack the work ethic of a high-profile prospect for no reason. It was a rare moment of accountability. Not public, not loud, but meaningful. And long overdue. Because the truth is, Rex's take wasn't just wrong, it was harmful. It reflected the way the league still struggles to reconcile its love for flashy personalities on Sundays with its disdain for those same traits Monday through Saturday. The NFL profits off confidence, individuality, and marketable players, until those players act like they know it. Shedeur Sanders knows it. He didn't stumble into the spotlight. He was raised in it. He's not faking confidence or chasing clicks. He's building a brand with intention, because he understands what the modern NFL demands. Talent alone isn't enough anymore. Visibility, presence, voice, those are all part of the equation now. And still he's doing the work. That's what made the footage so powerful. It wasn't leaked. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't a post-crisis PR stunt. It was organic, honest. A direct contradiction to the idea that he was entitled, disconnected, or lazy. The kid is locked in, sitting where the leaders sit, showing up the way future stars show up. And Rex's words crumbled under that reality. But the bigger story here is about who gets to control the narrative in the first place. Because Rex Ryan didn't have to verify anything. He didn't have to cite a source or reference a play. He just spoke, and the football world listened, because he's a legacy name, a former coach, a loud voice in the room. That's how these narratives gain traction. And that's how young players like Shedeur get labeled before they ever get a fair shot. It's not just Rex. It's the entire infrastructure around NFL coverage that continues to gatekeep respect. You have to act like you've been there, even if you haven't been given the chance to be there yet. You have to dim your personality until it's marketable. You have to play humble even when you've done the work. And if you don't? If you show up with a name, a following, and a voice? You better be ready for someone to try and knock you down. Shedeur didn't flinch. He didn't react publicly. He didn't clap back on social media. He didn't take the bait. He let the truth rise on its own. The receipts, the footage, the preparation, it all did the talking. And in doing so, he gave the league and its fans something to seriously think about. What kind of culture does the NFL really want? One that rewards quiet compliance? Or one that celebrates players who bring everything, talent, drive, personality, and vision, to the table? Because this moment wasn't just a bad take gone viral. It was a flashpoint. A clear example of the double standards so many players have called out for years. The NFL wants individuality, but on its terms. It wants stars, but only if they fit the mold. And Shedeur? He's not fitting into anything. He's setting the standard for what's next. A player who's confident without being careless. Branded without being boastful. Focused without being forced to hide it behind fake humility. He knows the weight of his last name, but he's also proving he doesn't need it as a crutch. And no analyst, no old-school coach, no loudmouth on TV is going to take that from him. Because this generation of players? They've seen it all before. The criticism, the labels, the forced come-up narrative. They're not waiting for validation. They're documenting the proof, on camera, online, in real time. So when someone like Rex Ryan tries to bury a young star with lazy talking points, the truth comes out faster than ever. That's the new reality. The NFL doesn't control the entire narrative anymore. Neither do its media personalities. The players are telling their stories. On their platforms. With their footage. In their voices. And Shedeur Sanders? He didn't just survive the lie. He buried it. And left behind a blueprint for every player who comes next. If you're tired of watching confident young athletes get torn down by outdated takes, if you're ready for a league that embraces authenticity instead of punishing it, drop a comment. Do you think the NFL needs to do more to protect its players from these reckless narratives? Or is this exactly the kind of cultural clash needed to push the sport forward? Subscribe, hit the bell, and stay tapped in. Because in today's NFL, the truth moves faster than the spin, and the players who come prepared with the footage? They're the ones rewriting the rules. This wasn't just about one player getting unfairly targeted. It was about how the NFL still allows its loudest voices to weaponize narrative, unchecked, with no accountability. And Shedeur? He happened to be the target this time. But how many players before him have been buried under that same noise, minus the cameras and the platforms to fight back? The difference now? This generation of players knows how to protect their image in real time. They document. They record. They bring the receipts. And when someone like Rex Ryan tries to recycle the tired, lazy quarterback label, especially against someone like Shedeur, who's visibly doing the work, the backlash is instant. There's no more hiding behind the desk and hoping no one pulls the footage. The receipts live online now. And in this case, they hit harder than any rebuttal ever could. Let's go back to what Rex said. He didn't just make a small critique or a casual misread of a situation. He called Shedeur an embarrassment. He said he had no work ethic. He questioned the integrity of a player who, by all accounts, had been doing everything right behind the scenes. That's not commentary. That's slander. And the damage from that kind of public attack? It doesn't just fade. Because once that kind of opinion enters the ecosystem, it spreads. It becomes part of draft analysis. Part of the way fans talk about the player. Part of the media loop that gets recycled on shows, social media, and scouting reports. And when it's false, when it's proven to be a complete fabrication, there's rarely any follow-up to undo the harm. That's the real problem. These narratives don't just vanish when exposed, they linger. And the NFL knows this. That's why the league reportedly intervened behind the scenes. Rex wasn't just called out by fans. He was allegedly warned by insiders close to the league. Because when a personality as visible as Rex Ryan pushes a false narrative about a player as high-profile as Shedeur Sanders, it reflects directly on the league's credibility. The NFL markets itself as a meritocracy. It tells fans and players alike that hard work, discipline, and talent will always win. But what happens when a player does all that, and still gets torn down by someone clinging to old-school perceptions of how players are supposed to look, act, and carry themselves? What happens is this moment right here. A complete collapse of the system's credibility. Shedeur's confidence was never the problem. It was his unwillingness to perform submission that triggered people. He didn't enter the league with his head down, asking for validation. He entered with presence. With intention. With a name, yes, but also with the work to match it. And that's what critics like Rex couldn't process. Because they weren't used to players coming in with their own platform. Their own narrative, their own voice. And let's not kid ourselves. If Shedeur hadn't been who he is, if he hadn't grown up in this media age, if he hadn't known how to leverage cameras, if he hadn't had a legacy name and a following, this narrative might have stuck. That's the most damning part. The only reason this got corrected so quickly is because Shedeur had the visibility to challenge it. Which raises the question, how many other players have been slandered like this and didn't have the spotlight to fight back? How many rookies got labeled lazy because they didn't carry themselves in a way that satisfied someone in the media? How many were passed over, doubted, or benched based on perception instead of performance? This controversy exposed more than one lie. It cracked open the league's deep discomfort with players who show up fully formed. Not just physically prepared, but media ready. The NFL still operates with a control-first mentality. It wants players who need the system, not players who can operate independently of it. Shedeur isn't just independent, he's strategic. His confidence isn't performative. It's protective. It's calculated. It's the armor he built by watching his father navigate a league that never fully embraced individuality. He saw what happened when Deion wore chains, danced in the end zone, and spoke his truth. He saw how quickly praise turned into scrutiny. So now, Shedeur is playing that same game, with even more awareness. He knows the playbook, and he's rewriting it. That's what makes this situation so frustrating for the old guard. Rex Ryan comes from an era where coaches could control everything, where players were expected to be quiet until they were allowed to speak, where image was controlled top-down and personality had to be filtered. But players are the narrators. They're the producers of their own story. And Shedeur is the perfect example of that shift. And the fact that Rex Ryan tried to drag him anyway, knowing full well he didn't have the facts, tells you everything about how fragile that old structure really is. This wasn't just a moment of mistaken analysis. It was a reaction to the threat of autonomy. Because if more players come in like Shedeur, confident, well-spoken, camera-ready, business-minded, what happens to the media figures who made their careers off gatekeeping? What happens to the talking heads who used to control the narrative unchallenged? They lose power. And that's exactly what happened here. Rex Ryan's credibility didn't just take a hit, it got exposed. He put out a claim with no basis, and the proof that surfaced after didn't just make him look wrong, it made him look obsolete, out of touch, loud but no longer respected. And the NFL, aware of how closely tied media perception is to player marketability, stepped in before it got worse. Because the league needs players like Shedeur now. It needs charisma. It needs connection. It needs modern athletes who know how to bring in new fans, who can carry both the sport and the spotlight. And that kind of presence? It doesn't come from traditional humility. It comes from confidence, identity, and self-awareness. The very things Rex tried to tear down. So now the NFL has a decision to make. Stick with the old heads who can't adapt, or start protecting the players who represent the league's future. Because the days of unchecked media slander are over. The players aren't voiceless anymore. They're not waiting for the league to speak for them. They're speaking for themselves. And the smartest ones? They're doing it without saying a word. Just ask Shedeur. He didn't respond to Rex. He didn't tweet a rebuttal. He didn't call into a show. He let the footage talk. He let the truth rise. And in doing so, he embarrassed the people who tried to embarrass him. No PR stunt. No statement. Just a quiet, undeniable reminder. He's already doing the work. And the people who need to know? They already see it. So for the next player who walks in like they belong, who doesn't shrink themselves to make tradition comfortable, this is the playbook. You don't have to argue. You don't have to explain. You show up. You show the work. And when they lie, you let the footage shut them down. The most ironic part? Rex Ryan probably thought he was being bold, provocative, saying the tough truth others were too scared to voice. But what he really did was expose how fragile that old-school mindset is, one that panics when a player shows up with polish, pride, and presence. Because Shedeur Sanders didn't break any rules. He didn't skip meetings, he didn't disrespect coaches, and he definitely didn't show up expecting special treatment. What he did do was walk in like someone who knows his value, and that's what unsettled people. Confidence like his doesn't play well in a system that still runs on silent compliance. But here's the shift, players aren't playing along anymore. They're not here to wait their turn in line, to shrink themselves into roles that make others comfortable. They're stepping up, front and center, before the league decides it's time. And that confidence? It's not empty. It's earned. You don't sit next to veterans and coordinators in the front row of team meetings unless you're serious. You don't pore over game plans and spend hours in the film room unless you're grinding. And when the footage came out showing Shedeur doing exactly that, Rex Ryan's entire narrative disintegrated. It didn't just collapse, it evaporated. And this wasn't a small oops. This wasn't a minor misreading of a situation. It was a public character assassination rooted in zero evidence, spoken with full authority, and broadcast to millions. A seasoned NFL voice, going out of his way to label a young black quarterback as lazy, arrogant, and unserious. Just because he looked too confident. That's the part no one can ignore. Because these labels aren't thrown around at random. They follow a pattern. A very old, very tired pattern. And the reason the backlash was so loud this time is because fans, especially younger ones, aren't accepting that pattern anymore. They've seen it too many times. They've learned how it works. They've watched players get pigeonholed by narratives that have nothing to do with their work ethic and everything to do with how uncomfortable their confidence makes people. Shedeur was supposed to be another easy target. But he flipped the script without saying a word. And that silence? That's what really delivered the blow. No subtweets. No interviews. Just footage. Just facts. And that hit harder than any media response ever could. Because there's nothing louder than proof. And when the NFL reportedly stepped in to warn Rex Ryan, it wasn't just about protecting Shedeur. It was about protecting the league's image. The NFL is built on marketable stars. It needs faces of the future. And if it allows people like Rex to keep dragging those faces down for sport, it's not just players who suffer, it's the brand. So what does the league do now? Well, it can either lean into this new reality or keep tripping over its old one. Because Shedeur isn't an outlier, he's a blueprint. He's what more and more players are becoming, fully formed brands before they ever sign an NFL contract. That's not a threat. That's evolution. And if the system isn't ready for that, it'll keep getting called out, exposed, and left behind. What happened with Rex Ryan wasn't just a misstep, it was a warning shot. Not from the league to Rex, but from the future to the past. A signal that the old ways of policing player personalities are losing their grip. Shedeur's story is no longer about whether or not he's NFL ready. It's about how the league will handle players who show up already media-savvy, brand-aware, and unapologetically themselves. Will it embrace that? Or punish it? So far, the answer has been mixed. But the backlash against Rex made one thing clear. This new generation has support. Fans are watching. The receipts are live. And the lies? They don't survive the truth anymore. The whole Rex Shedeur debacle? It was supposed to be a warning to Shedeur. Instead, it became a warning about Rex. And by extension, a warning to anyone else trying to hold onto a version of football culture that doesn't reflect the present. Because this isn't just about protecting players. It's about redefining respect. Respect that isn't given based on how quiet you are, how humble you appear, or how well you play the media's game, but based on what you do, how you lead, and how hard you work behind the scenes. And if the NFL's smart, it'll lean into that shift. Protect the players who are evolving the sport. Call out the voices still stuck in the past. And start measuring work ethic with facts, not bias. If you're watching this thinking, finally, someone said it, drop a comment. Let the league know the fans are paying attention. Should outdated takes like Rex Ryan still have a place in modern sports media? Or is it time for a full reset? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're not done holding these narratives accountable. The spin is slowing down. The truth is catching up.